Among the greatest warriors in the history of Islam was Khalid ibn al-Walid, before whose unsheathed sword the superpowers of the age, the Persian and Roman empires, were compelled to bow. Khalid's presence on the battlefield could alter the course and outcome of a war at any moment. Combining military brilliance, strategy, strength, courage, speed, and agility, he was an invincible warrior. The messenger of Allah himself granted him the title Saifullah, meaning the Sword of Allah, based on the book The Sword of Allah written by the renowned Pakistani military historian A.I. Akram. We are presenting the life story of the great hero Khalid in a continuous series. Throughout the month of Ramadan, you can watch the complete life story of Khalid ibn al-Walid in 30 episodes on the Islamic Video Bangla Facebook page and YouTube channel. If you have not watched the previous videos of this series about Khalid ibn al-Walid, you will find their links in the description of this post. We request you to watch the previous episodes before viewing this video. The wave of apostasy spread so extensively that, except for the people of Mecca and Medina and the tribe of Thaqif and Taif, nearly all the tribes of Arabia were affected by it. In some cases, entire tribes abandoned Islam, while in others, only portions of them did so. During this time, many Muslims remained firm upon Islam even at the cost of their lives. Two false prophets, Talha ibn Khuwaylid and Muzaylima, along with a false female prophet named Sajah bint al-Harith, ignited the flames of apostasy throughout Arabia. During the illness of the Messenger of Allah, Talha declared himself a prophet. The first threat to Medina, the capital of the newly established Islamic State, came from Talha. The tribes of Western Central and Northern Central Arabia began to follow him. These included the tribes of Ghatafan, Tay, Hawazin, Banu Asad, and Banu Sulaim. The apostates began gathering at two locations, Abrak, 70 miles northeast of Medina, and Dichu Kissa, 24 miles east of the city. Among those assembled, there were members of the Ghatafan, Hawazin, and Tay tribes. Within 1 or 2 weeks after the departure of Usama's army from Medina, the apostates at Dichu Kissa sent a delegation to Abu Bakr with a proposal. They said, "We will perform the prayers, but we cannot pay any tax." Abu Bakr replied in an extremely firm voice, "By Allah, if even an ounce of property is due from you as tax and you refuse to pay it, I will declare jihad against you. I give you 1 day to respond." The delegation was stunned by the determination and confidence of the new caliph. Before the deadline for their response had even expired, they fled Medina. Their flight amounted to a rejection of the caliph's demand. Immediately after their departure, Abu Bakr sent messengers to every apostate tribe, calling upon them to remain loyal to Islam and continue paying all forms of taxes. Before leaving Medina, the delegation from Dichu Kissa had observed the absence of Muslim warriors from the city. Returning to Dichu Kissa, they informed their tribesmen of their conversation with the caliph and described the vulnerable condition of Medina. Meanwhile, Talha, who was stationed at Samira during that period, reinforced the apostates at Dichu Kissa by sending an army under the command of his clever and capable brother Hybel. After hearing the detailed account from the delegation, the apostates became eager to launch a devastating attack upon defenseless Medina. They moved their forces from Dichu Kissa to Dichu Husa, using it as an assembly area, while an advanced detachment pitched tents even closer to Medina as preparation for the assault. The time was the 3rd week of July, 632 CE. Through secret intelligence, Abu Bakr learned of the developments and began organizing Medina's defense. Although the main Muslim army under Usama ibn Zayd was away from Medina, the city's defenses were not as weak as the enemy imagined. Several warriors from the clan of Banu Hashim, the tribe of the Messenger of Allah, were still in Medina mourning his death. With their support, Abu Bakr formed a military force. His confidence was unshakable. Moreover, the presence of brave warriors such as Ali ibn Abi Talib, Zubair ibn al-Awwam, and Talha ibn Ubaidullah strengthened his resolve even further. He divided the newly formed force into 3 sections and entrusted command of each section respectively to Ali, Zubair, and Talha. For 3 days nothing significant occurred because the apostates could not determine how to launch their attack. Then, upon Abu Bakr's orders, the Muslim force rapidly advanced outside Medina and launched a sudden assault upon the enemy's forward camp, driving them back. The apostates withdrew to Dhu Husa. When news of this success reached Abu Bakr, he ordered the Muslim forces to remain there and await further instructions. The following day, Abu Bakr departed Medina with a large convoy of pack camels. Since the war camels had already departed with Usama's army, the Caliph was compelled to begin the campaign riding pack camels. When Abu Bakr's camel convoy reached the vicinity of the enemy's abandoned camp, the Muslim warriors mounted the camels and advanced toward the enemy concentration at Dhu Husa. At Dhu Husa, the enemy army awaited the Muslims under the command of Talha's brother Hybal. Here Hybal demonstrated his military cunning. Ahead of his assembly area, near a slope bordered by steep hills, he concealed troops in ambush. Unaware of the hidden enemy positions, the Muslim force riding upon pack camels proceeded across the slope. As they approached the steep hill, the apostates suddenly sprang up and began rolling down large goatskins filled with water from the heights above. As the water-filled skins thundered down toward the Muslim troops, the apostates beat drums loudly, shouted wildly, and burst into shrill laughter. The pack camels of the Muslim army, which had no training for warfare, became terrified upon hearing the deafening noise and seeing the unfamiliar objects rolling toward them. Panic-stricken, the camels turned around and began fleeing at great speed. The Muslims tried desperately to control their frightened mounts, but failed. Within a short time, they were driven back to Medina. This incident filled Hybal with deep satisfaction, and he had reason to feel so. He had managed to drive the Muslim force back into Medina with remarkable ease. Considering Hybal's tactic, it may even be assumed that the apostates' earlier withdrawal from their forward position near Medina had been a trap designed to lure the Muslims out of the city. But Hybal now made a mistake. He assumed that the Muslims themselves had become terrified and that their rapid retreat to Medina was a sign of weakness. He did not realize that the frightened creatures were merely the pack camels unaccustomed to war, not the Muslim warriors themselves. Hybal sent news of this apparent success to his main force stationed at Dhu Husa and ordered them to advance. That very evening, the entire apostate army moved forward once again and established camp at the very position near Medina from which they had withdrawn only a day earlier. Their morale was extremely high. On the other hand, every member of the Muslim force burned with anger and determination to take revenge through a counterattack. Abu Bakr knew that the apostates had returned to their former position near Medina and established camp there. He decided to strike before the enemy could complete their preparations for battle. By his command, the Muslims spent the entire night reorganizing their small force and preparing for war. After midnight, Abu Bakr departed Medina with his army and, upon approaching the enemy position, arranged his troops for attack. He divided the entire force into 4 sections. 2 on the flanks, 1 in the center, and 1 assigned to protect the rear of the army. Abu Bakr retained command of the central division himself, while the commands of the right wing, left wing, and rear guard were entrusted respectively to Nu'man, Abdullah, and Suwad, all sons of Muqarrin. Before dawn, the Muslim army advanced toward the enemy camp. At that time, the apostate army, confident of an easy victory in the coming battle, lay in deep sleep. This time it was Hybal's turn to be taken unaware. Before the first light of dawn had appeared, the Muslim warriors fell upon the apostates with drawn swords and overwhelming fury. Many of the enemy were killed, while the rest considered flight to be the safest course. Their retreat continued until they reached Dhu Husa. Although they reorganized themselves there, their morale was no longer what it had once been. This victory belonged to the Caliph, and it was highly significant. It was a bloody strategic operation in which the enemy had been forced to retreat not merely through deception, but through actual combat and the use of the sword. Abu Bakr had planned to compensate for the weakness of his small numbers by launching a sudden surprise attack and throwing the enemy into confusion, and he succeeded perfectly. He needed a swift victory, and he obtained it. It is interesting to note that this was the first recorded example of a night attack in Muslim military history. Such operations, however, would not become widely practiced until the era of the First World War. After this victory, Abu Bakr concluded that the enemy must not be given time to recover. Before they could overcome the shock, confusion, and disorder caused by the sudden assault, they had to be struck again. As soon as the sun rose, he marched toward Ditchu Kissa. Upon arriving there, the caliph arranged his troops in the same manner as the previous night and attacked the enemy. The apostates attempted to resist the Muslim army, but their morale had become so weak that within a short time they abandoned the battlefield and fled to Abrak, where more men from the tribes of Gadafan, Hawazin, and Tay had assembled. After capturing Ditchu Kissa, Abu Bakr sent a small force under the command of Talha ibn Ubaidullah to pursue the fleeing enemy. Talha advanced some distance and succeeded in killing several scattered enemies. Abu Bakr captured Ditchu Kissa on July 30th, 632 CE, or perhaps a day or two earlier or later. He left a force under the command of Numan ibn Mukaran at Ditchu Kissa and returned to Medina. On August 2nd, Usama ibn Zayd returned to Medina with his army, and from that point onward there remained no concern regarding the safety of the Islamic capital. That was the situation in Medina. Meanwhile, Usama reached Tabuk with his army, where nearly every tribe in the region resisted him fiercely. Yet Usama, with the vigor and speed of youth, crushed every obstacle. He conducted extensive operations throughout northern Arabia and eventually reached Dumad al-Jandal, where 2 years earlier Khalid ibn al-Walid had captured Uqadir. Throughout the campaign, Usama continued advancing, killing all who resisted him. As a result of his operations, several tribes renewed their allegiance to Medina and embraced Islam once again. However, the tribe of Qudaa remained rebellious, and sometime later another campaign under Amr ibn al-As became necessary. Usama then launched an expedition toward Mu'tah and fought the Arab Christians of the Kalb and Ghassan tribes, avenging the death of his father. No major battle occurred there, however. He returned to Medina with large numbers of prisoners and considerable wealth. Part of this wealth had been collected as tribute, while the rest consisted of property abandoned by the enemy. Abu Bakr and the Muslims of Medina warmly welcomed Usama's army upon its return. The force had been absent from Medina for 40 days, and with its return a sense of relief and security spread throughout the city. News of the apostates' defeat at Ditchu Kissa filled the other rebellious tribes with intense hatred toward the Muslims. They began brutally killing Muslim members within their own tribes. Some victims were even burned alive or thrown from high mountains to their deaths. Abu Bakr listened to these reports with intense anger and swore that he would wage campaigns against every apostate tribe and destroy every individual responsible for murdering Muslims. The situation had now begun to favor the Muslims. Although the caliph's recent victories were not final or decisive, they greatly strengthened the morale of the believers. Several tribes around Medina repented, re-embraced Islam, and resumed payment of taxes. Usama ibn Zayd returned with war captives as well as considerable wealth. As a result, the treasury of Medina once again became full, and the caliph gained the financial capability to launch a comprehensive campaign against the enemies of Islam. However, rather than rushing forward, Abu Bakr decided to give Usama's army sufficient rest and re-equip it properly before beginning a full-scale campaign. He ordered Usama and his troops to rest, while simultaneously remaining vigilant regarding the security of the capital. Meanwhile, the hastily assembled army of the caliph gradually became properly organized and fully equipped. Since Usama's army was resting, the caliph decided to conduct an expedition against the apostates gathered at Abrak using this newly formed force. Abu Bakr was now fully prepared to wage war in order to punish the apostates for their hateful crimes and avenge the innocent Muslims they had murdered. When Abu Bakr announced his intention to personally lead the Muslim army in the campaign toward Abrak, experienced individuals tried to dissuade him. They said, "O representative of the Messenger of Allah, may Allah's mercy be upon you. It is not appropriate for you to place yourself in danger by personally leading the expedition to Abrak. Allah forbid, if you are martyred in battle, everything will fall into chaos. Your very existence is a source of fear for the unbelievers. Instead, appoint another commander. If he is martyred, you can appoint someone else in his place." Very soon Abu Bakr was going to place an immense responsibility upon the Muslim warriors. He would ask them to strike blows unlike anything they had struck before, and in doing so they would face dangers capable of terrifying them. In order to inspire the Muslim army to fulfill the role he envisioned for them, He saw no better path than personally accepting the risk of leadership. Thus he replied, "No, by Allah, I myself will lead the army. I will never place my burden upon another man's shoulders." At last, under the leadership of Abu Bakr himself, a small Muslim force marched toward Dichu Kissa. Their Nu'man ibn Muqarrin welcomed the caliph. This Nu'man would later become famous in history as the conqueror of Nahawand against the Persians. Abu Bakr entrusted command of the army's wings and rear guard to Nu'man and his brothers, just as he had done previously during the night attack, and then advanced toward Abrak. The time was the third week of Jamada al-Ula in August. When the Muslim army reached Abrak, they found the enemy already arranged in battle formation. Without delay, Abu Bakr deployed his forces and launched an assault. The morale of the apostates was no longer as high as it had been 2 weeks earlier. Those defeated and routed at Dichu Kissa had joined the apostates gathered at Abrak, and naturally their shattered morale affected the others as well. Because of their numerical superiority, the apostates managed to resist the Muslim assault for a short period. But before long they broke ranks and fled the battlefield. Abu Bakr achieved yet another victory. The apostates who fled from Abrak, along with rebels from surrounding regions, gathered at Buzaka. The apostate leader Talha ibn al-Walid also arrived there from Samira. Some tribes in the area, however, submitted to a Muslim detachment sent by the caliph after the victory at Abrak in order to subdue the surrounding regions. Certain tribes repented and resumed payment of taxes. The day after the victory, Abu Bakr returned from Abrak to Medina. After spending some days handling affairs of state, he departed again with Usama's former army toward Dichu Kissa. This force was no longer known as Usama's army, because Usama had fulfilled his mission and his term of command had ended. Under the leadership of the caliph, it was now known simply as the Army of Islam. Upon reaching Dichu Kissa, Abu Bakr divided the Army of Islam into several sections in order to confront the enemies occupying different parts of Arabia. In reality, only a very small territory remained under Muslim control. For the first time in Muslim history, the Muslim army was divided into separate commands, each assigned independent missions under the strategic direction of the caliph. Through this development, Muslim commanders entered a vast arena of military operations in which they would later astonish the world with their skill. In the fourth week of August, 632 CE, at Dichu Kissa, Abu Bakr determined the strategy for the campaigns against the apostates. The objectives of his earlier expeditions against the apostates at Dichu Kissa and Abrak had been primarily to defend Medina and deny the enemy an opportunity to launch larger operations. But his deeper purpose had been to gain time by holding back the enemy while preparing the main Muslim army properly. Through these operations, Abu Bakr successfully disrupted the enemy's preparations and established a foundation from which the great campaigns that followed could be launched. Abu Bakr possessed an exceptionally clear understanding of his responsibilities. He had to confront many enemies. At Buzaka stood the apostate Talha ibn al-Walid. At Buda was Malik ibn Nawara. At Yamama stood the false prophet Musailamah. He also had to deal with the apostates spread throughout the vast coastal regions of eastern and southern Arabia, Bahrain, Oman, Mara, Hadramaut, and Yemen. Rebellions had even erupted in the regions south and east of Mecca. Moreover, shortly after Usama's return, the northern Arabian tribe of Quday'a once again joined the ranks of the apostates. In these circumstances, the position of the Muslims resembled a tiny island of faith surrounded by a vast ocean of disbelief. It was like a single burning lamp amid immense darkness. And upon the shoulders of Abu Bakr rested not only the responsibility of keeping that lamp alive, but also the duty of destroying the forces of darkness gathered on every side and scattering the darkness itself. Although the apostates were not united, they greatly outnumbered the Muslims. Alongside Abu Bakr stood the finest military commanders among the Muslims of that era. His greatest weapon was Khalid ibn al-Walid, the Sword of Allah. Taking the overall situation into consideration, Abu Bakr determined his war strategy and divided the Muslim forces into several corps. Khalid was appointed commander of the strongest corps. The responsibility of this corps was to strike and destroy the enemy's strongest strongholds. The remaining corps were tasked with attacking and subduing the comparatively weaker tribes after the principal enemy strongholds had been crushed. 2 corps were kept as reserve forces to assist Khalid or any other commander whenever necessary. According to the plan, Khalid would conduct the first campaign. He was assigned the responsibility of destroying the enemy's strongest bases one after another through successive assaults. Based on his success, the remaining corps would launch their operations. Abu Bakr's strategy was first to clear west-central Arabia of enemy presence, then destroy Malik ibn Nuwayra, and finally eliminate the principal enemy, the false prophet Musaylima. In this way, Abu Bakr ensured the coordinated use of force by confronting the enemy groups separately and in stages. His strategy was to strike the nearer enemies first, and then proceed toward the more distant ones. The Caliph formed 11 independent corps under separate commands. He presented each corps with its own banner. The available manpower was distributed among them. Certain corps were assigned urgent missions requiring immediate operations, while others were given missions scheduled for later campaigns. The commanders were instructed to recruit brave warriors along their routes while advancing toward their objectives. The commanders of the 11 corps were Khalid ibn al-Walid, Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, Amr ibn al-As, Shurabil ibn Hazana, Khalid ibn Sa'idi, Tarifa ibn Hajjais, Ala al-Hadrami, Hudhayfa ibn Maisan, Arfaja ibn Harthama, Muhajir ibn Abi Amaya, and Suwaid ibn Mukarin. As soon as the organization of the corps and distribution of responsibilities were completed, the Caliph began his march. Shortly afterward, Ikrimah and Amr ibn al-As also departed. The remaining corps were instructed by the Caliph to begin their journeys several weeks, and in some cases several months, later. Depending on the progress of Khalid's operations, the Caliph released the remaining corps one by one. Before launching expeditions from Dhu Kissa against the various apostate tribes, the Caliph sent envoys to them calling them back to the peaceful path of Islam. The envoys delivered the Caliph's message to the rebel tribes. Those who returned beneath the shade of Islam would be forgiven and allowed to live in peace. But those who resisted the Muslim armies would be destroyed through war, and their women and children would be taken into slavery. Before attacking any tribe, the Muslim forces would call the adhan for prayer. If a tribe responded to the adhan, it was understood that they had acknowledged the authority of Islam. In addition to assigning specific objectives, the Caliph gave the corps commanders the following general instructions. First, establish contact with the tribe assigned as your target. Second, call them to prayer through the adhan. Third, if the tribe responds to the adhan, do not attack them. After the adhan, ask whether they are prepared to fully submit to Islam, including payment of taxes. If they agree, do not attack them. Fourth, those who submit will not be harmed. Fifth, those who do not respond to the adhan and who refuse allegiance afterward will be punished through fire and sword. Sixth, those apostates who killed Muslims shall themselves be killed, and those who burned Muslims alive shall likewise be burned. After issuing these directives, the gentle, courteous, humble, and soft-spoken companion of the Messenger of Allah during his lifetime, Abu Bakr, initiated the Muslim advance campaign with a firm and uncompromising resolve to suppress the enemies of Islam.